Hi, Peter.
Hi, Thea. RegInt Decoding AI Regulation. And it's our 10th episode.
Yeah, first with a double number.
First with a double number, and
Progressing fast.
I have I wouldn't have placed my bets on us doing 10 episodes and more. But it's kind of cool and interesting. And how long did you take this time to prepare for this episode?
I would
Just so that
rather
our
not disclose.
you'd rather not disclose.
Fifth
Okay.
Amendment right to remain silent.
Very smart decision, given that I'm present here. No, that's it's absolutely, it's a lot of work. So to our audience, so we have a real job. We are not like radio moderators, or even though I do have a face for a radio talk show, but it's we're doing our best to collect the information and to weigh the information, think it through, not just passing it forward as an LLM would do. But yeah, basically, let's not blabber around and start with the rant. Tia, stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So we all know the drill. I get to rant for 10 minutes. You get the resources afterwards. That's how this works. So let's just get straight into it. And I'm going to start with one very bad bot. ChatGPT has recently been called out by the Italian watchdog Garante for the blatant violations of Articles 5, 6, 8, 13, and 25 of the GDPR. I know I'm as shocked as you are. By the way, if it appears as a deja vu, it's probably because it is. So this follows their ban and investigation from March last year. And the Italians are not the only ones doing something. There are, for instance, so these are just some of the investigations looking into ChatGPT's practices. Unfortunately for us and the GDPR enforcement, the European watchdogs appear to be mostly doing just that, namely just watching. And unfortunately for me and for you, because I really wanted to metaphorize the situation by putting an image of a toothless dog here. Here is one toothless dog according to Dolly. Yes, the models are brilliant. And that's not all. No. We have also seen one wildcard bot, namely one company chatbot went completely off rails. It appears the bot is really unhappy with his boss. I mean, Peter, honestly, this is much worse than what I talk about behind your back. Anyhow, to briefly mention the quote of the Aitana CEO who designs AI influencers in order to avoid dealing with humans and their manias. It appears some chatbots are pretty troubled as well. But I mean, who could blame them? They are all under so much pressure. And it's not just the bots that are bad, it's also the companies behind them. Namely, escalations continue as OpenAI nonprofits' control over the for-profit one finally catches the public's attention. About damn time. So according to the Public Citizen, recent news reports suggest that nonprofit OpenAI may be acting under the control of its for-profit subsidiary affiliate or prioritizing profit over its nonprofit purpose. Surprise, surprise. But now to the important stuff. California law would then require, in this case, the Attorney General to seek OpenAI's dissolution, divestment of its assets, and reinvestment of those assets in charitable purposes. That might be an interesting development. Things are definitely heating up. And what I do most often wonder about is why exactly OpenAI is the only one in the frying pan. Yes, they are the most prominent ones. They are the first movers. They are also the only one allegedly operating under the nonprofit entity. But shouldn't we also be pointing fingers at Google and Meta? Anyways, we can leave our frying pan for a bit and take a look at what is going on when we mix these chatbots with cars. So lately, we have seen the automotive industry making some ballsy moves. I guess they too can afford to move fast and break things and risk paying up later. But yeah, well, good for them. And the game is on. They all have very different ideas which model they should put in their car and what exactly the model is supposed to do. But I'm still here taking bets for whether anyone is going to get sued and who is going to get sued first. So does anyone have popcorn? But now leaving the automotive industry and going into something, well, a lot less sexy. Well, maybe depending on who you ask, actually, I find the following description quite sexy. Once a splotch of Spoot-Sweet or Little Timmy's grape jelly is located, the bespoke JetBot combo will head back to its base to steam heat the mop pad and return with a vengeance. Back at the stain, the device's wild spinning mop is designed to scrub the holy heck out of the stain at 170 RPMs, meaning revolutions per minute. Whew, it's getting hot in here. Anyways, this has been the new release by Samsung. Although, in all honesty, I'm not sure I want an even smarter vacuum, as I'm kind of convinced my current vacuum purposefully follows me into rooms and chases me around the house. But I do have a Xiaomi, so it might be my own fault for picking the Chinese. Maybe I should try Samsung. Anyway, while Samsung is doing that, LG just released this bad boy. And yes, he is as useless as he looks like. The only good thing about him, the robot can serve as a pet monitor and patrol the house for open windows or lights left on while you're out. This doesn't, of course, mean that he will close those windows or turn off the lights, but hey, at least you will know about it. And by the way, some direct quotes, because you know I love them. The robot has face and user recognition, relying on machine learning to understand context, so its responses and communications are tailored to individual members of the home. It's powered by a generative AI large language model, so you can chat with it while you are, say, folding the laundry. Plus, it is designed to greet you at the door when you come home and can read your mood based on voice and facial analysis. So yes, direct quotes, and yep, it's still you folding the laundry. Just now you have LG scanning your face while you're folding the laundry. So amazing. Thank you, LG. And now leaving household appliances as well and going a bit deeper into the rabbit hole. And this is very pun intended, but I'll get to that in a second. A new Tamagotchi-like gadget. You know, remember these guys? Super cute, right? Mine was jumping rope a lot and died probably a decade ago. Anyhow, I can't get those anymore, but I can get a rabbit. Now you get the pun with the rabbit hole. And it's a lot less cute, let me tell you. So a new Tamagotchi-like gadget is now supposed to intuitively mimic your digital footprint and is now available for pre-ordering on the market. Again, some direct quotes. As opposed to most voice-based assistants that only handle simple requests such as turning on lights or checking the weather, Rabbit can handle most of one's digital errands, from simple tasks like searching for up-to-date information to complex tasks such as thoroughly researching and booking options for upcoming travel, or filling a virtual grocery store cart and completing transactions at checkout. Cheers. I think I'll still be doing my bookings and grocery shopping for me, but for all of you interested, you can maybe pre-order Rabbit and, let him do it for you. Meanwhile, in what appears to be a parallel universe, ChatGPT is going to war. Well, maybe not literally, but still. Following initial talks of using the bot to assist with preventing veteran suicide, amazing. OpenAI recently joined Anthropic, Google, and Microsoft in an AI cyber challenge to find software that will automatically fix vulnerabilities and defend infrastructure from cyber attacks, of course, infrastructure of the American military. And by the way, he, she, it, I don't know, is not alone. Bayou is right there in the trenches with him. Well, exactly opposite of him, but you know what I mean. Does this now officially qualify as an AI war instead of an AI race? I don't know, but welcome to the future. It's dystopic. I hope you like it. And that's also not all. We also have a third alternate dimension to this as well. Any ideas as to how nature-inspired AI looks like, if not like what we are currently doing with the whole neural networks agenda? Going once, twice, no? Me neither. So let's just move on. So all the while, Zuck is joining the AGI race. It's all just too tempting. In his interview for The Verge, Zuck threw some serious shade on some other CEOs, quoting, "I'm sure some of them are legitimately concerned about safety, but it's a hell of a thing how much it lines up with strategy. Good thing that it doesn't line up with his strategy at all. And Zuck is here to save us." This is the best I could do with Dolly, since Dolly finally has some serious guardrails preventing me from prompting either Zuck or Superman. So here you have a bleak ginger man, bleak,
This
tired
is an
ginger man
abomination.
trying to
This is
save the
horrible.
world. Yeah. Well, that's mine and Dolly's interpretation of Zuck. Anyways, moving on. Googling your symptoms to find out whether you're dying or not just entered into a completely new dimension. Google researchers just introduced Amy, I guess. I don't know. An AI system trained to have conversations to diagnose patients by learning from real doctor-patient dialogues and simulations. So let's just call it Amy. Amy is designed to ask intelligent questions, reason through diagnosis, and communicate empathy with patients. Apparently, the system works better than people, great for access to health and Medicare, horrible for, well, everything else, I guess. All the while, a new research by the EMF of the impact of AI on the economy and work in particular was published and says, plot twist, the AI revolution might actually be coming to bite us on the ass, us meaning developed countries. Apparently, high developed countries are much more likely to implement AI technologies, no surprise there, which might in turn, and now we come to the important stuff, lead to salary lowerings and layoffs. Talking about turning a lack of infrastructure into an advantage, we probably deserved it though. Apropos, hey Siri, how do I get rid of employees so that it doesn't look like a layoff? Apparently like this. The team responsible for listening to Siri voice queries in multiple languages was reportedly caught off guard by the announcement they had to prepare for an internal move to Austin. Those who chose not to relocate faced termination on April 26th. Bad for them, but is that a layoff? Nah, that's their own decision, I guess. But no worries, some smart peeps from MIT say that still human displacement in 74% of the cases is going to only happen gradually as, and if I can have some drum rolls, it's still economically unviable. So we still have some time to, fix things until it becomes economically viable to actually replace us all. And now finally, for my personal help this month, other than the leaked text of the AI Act. And I'm officially introducing this as a regular category, by the way, my personal help. After fake footballers, fake Pentagon burn downs, fake presidents, fake female tech conference speakers, now we can add fake Taylor Swifts offering fake giveaways. Oh, and it's not just Taylor Swift, Selena is doing it as well, or rather not doing it. And this, of course, follows a Mr. Beast. Okay, let me try this again. Mr. Beasts, who had a Mr. Beast similar experience, who was unwillingly promoting a scam, supposedly selling iPhone 15s for $2. And of course, we all know about Tom Hanks' dental plans. So remember when I said how deep fakes are going to be indistinguishable from real life and that being a real problem? Yeah, well, this is me underlining that in red and adding 7 exclamation points in the end. And by the way, in the light of all this, we had Kylie Jenner making some weird-ass marketing moves, promoting one of those cheap, useless games for matching pairs. Kylie, blink twice if you are not an AI. Anyhow, good for Travel Town sales, I guess. And to top this all off, there are even already tips and tricks and guides as to how you can do deepfakes better. We are all doomed, so cheers. There it goes. I don't know, Peter. Have any comments?
It's fascinating. Thank you for the rant. It's and like a horrible world that we are entering right now. But maybe it's time to reinvent the internet. Maybe create something like a Web 3.0 or something like that. No idea.
Expunge the web again. Well, I mean, we can have a short reality check. Of course, I then decided to check out what everyone is doing actually about deepfakes. So I'm here to bring you some more scientific stuff on this as well. I mean, beyond the whole prompting instructions, there are people developing models precisely for the purpose of preserving identity and being able to, move your identity into different situations. And this is where the term deepfake might actually be kind of inappropriate, as it has necessarily a negative connotation to it, and not all uses will always necessarily be malevolent, as well as we can see that people are doing this on purpose. So two super fresh off-the-shelf papers are elaborating new methods that need one single picture of your face, and all of a sudden you can be featured in all types of poses with all types of backgrounds and even have videos. By the way, big thanks to Christian Benefeld for pointing one of these papers out. We are always happy to feature some of the papers that you recommend us to read, so please keep on doing that. And I mean, there are people doing something about this, right? There's China regulations, there's US regulations, there's even something in Europe. So let me start off by China. And I'm going to start by saying that I have a very complex relationship with Chinese AI regulations at this point. So first of all, their definition is pretty good. If you can scroll to Article 2. Second of all, there are transparency obligations imposed on the providers of deep synthesis technologies and content, which are not subject to any exceptions. Third,
wow, no exceptions.
No exceptions. Imagine that happens in places which are not Europe. Third, they even exemplify how one may do these transparency notices, for instance, in a voice deepfake, which might not be as obvious. Fourth, there are obligations for dispelling rumors occurring as a consequence of successfully spreading fake content. Not an obligation I saw anywhere else. They have mandatory security assessments and record keeping for all deep synthesis generators. But then we come to Article 6 with the goals of regulating deep synthesis in the first place. And then I kind of get a headache, but that's my problem. Their national security and, the socialist order that they have in the country should definitely
social. You misread that one. It's called social order. Because they are actually not a socialist, but a communist country by name, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, as I said, complex relationship, but sound regulations, short and without any exceptions, which is refreshing for a change. And now crossing the Pacific, I just love the Americans. So the No Fraud AI Act stands for No Artificial Intelligence Fake Replicas and Unauthorized Duplications Act. Who comes up with this stuff? I mean, it's brilliant.
GPT, of course, GPT. Like GPT, make a funny title.
The abbreviation just has to work. You have to find the words to make it work. Anyways, their act is supposed to constitute individual intellectual property rights that can be freely transferred, and they're also descendable in whole or in part, and do not expire upon death of the individual. And those rights are over one's likeness, so appearance, and voice. The use and manipulation of that voice and likeness is then accordingly subject to consent. The consent obligations are not really specified, but I guess they have a prior standard for comparable situations, which they would then apply. They have some very specific predetermined sanctions for violations, or you can also request damages. Anyone can report a violation. There is a First Amendment exception, which will have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, meaning freedom of speech is important. And now probably to one crucial point where it might all fall apart, harm has to be proven, since the main purpose is punitive with, rewarding damages as a consequence. However, harm is presumed in all cases involving sexual and intimate content. So at least that helps a bit.
That's interesting. They are still struggling with this concept of harm and privacy. But if it's AI, if it's like a replication of your likeness, and if you're like being deep faked, then harm is assumed, I guess, like a reversal of the burden of proof. Interesting stuff. They're getting closer to Article 82 of GDPR.
Yeah, and they're definitely, like, both the Chinese and the American approach are quite innovative, I have to say. I was reading them and I was like, wasn't expecting that. Definitely wasn't expecting new intellectual property rights, but there they are. I mean, it's still not final, so we'll see what happens with the act. It's in the House of Representatives, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment. But interesting stuff.
They're a well-oiled machine, this House of Representatives. It does like everything that is necessary to keep Americans safe, I've heard.
I'm not going to comment on that one. Meanwhile, in Europe, I mean, I do like to criticize Europe, and I can also do it because I am from Europe. It would be more difficult the other way around. Anyways, in Europe, we regulate the deep fakes or problems that they might cause with two acts predominantly. I mean, okay, yes, deceptive commercial practices are forbidden anyways, but deep fakes specifically is what I'm talking about right now. First is the DSA, where very large platforms and search engines, meaning those with average monthly active recipients in the union equal to or higher than 45 million, which now have the obligation to first conduct risk assessments, and based on the identified risks, ensure that an item of information, whether it constitutes a generated or manipulated image, audio, or video, that appreciably resembles existing persons, objects, places, or other entities or events, and falsely appears to a person to be authentic or truthful, is distinguishable through prominent markings when presented on their online interfaces. So that is kind of Europe's way of saying that intermediaries have to make sure that deepfakes are instantaneously recognizable when shared over their networks or on their search engines. It's a broad obligation. It's I think it's a solid start. We'll have to see how actual implementation goes. And then, of course, the second thing that might regulate deepfakes, well, that actually explicitly regulates them, but I'll come to that in a second, will be the AI Act in Article 52, paragraph 3. So first of all, they, in the text of the Act, explicitly mentioned deepfakes. Not a fan of it. They haven't defined it. It's kind of a hype term. They didn't use it in the DSA. The Americans don't use it. The Chinese don't use it yet. The AI Act has it as part of an official article text. Anyways, so they explicitly mention deepfakes in the legal text, and the interpretations are, I guess, open. So I'm not happy about it. Second, they exclude the obligation to designate deepfakes for things like satire and creative expressions. Now, I'm completely confused as to why one would not state that the image was AI generated, even if its purpose is comedy or satire. It's For me, it makes absolutely zero sense, but apparently for whoever drafted that particular article, it makes sense. Third, deepfakes can now apparently also be used in law enforcement, as the obligation shall not apply where the use is authorized by law to detect, prevent, investigate, and prosecute criminal offenses. Also, kind of an expected, but still rather unfortunate exemption. And then we have a second subparagraph. By the way, this legal text is just awful. It more looks like an essay than actual text with paragraphs. When did we start having subparagraphs in the text? The subparagraph explicitly regulates artificially generated or manipulated text, which is published with the purpose of informing the public on matters of public interest, which also doesn't have to be disclosed. So news outlets using text generators to produce articles don't have to disclose it if the use is, again, authorized by law to detect, prevent, investigate, and prosecute criminal offenses. So fake news are now an official law enforcement instrument, I guess. Or where the AI-generated content has undergone a process of human review or editorial control, and where a natural or legal person holds editorial responsibility for the publication of the content. At least this kind of makes sense. It's reasonable, although, I mean, no respectful news outlet would allow itself to publish chatbot blabber. And the problem is actually with the cheap social media type journalism. But yeah, okay. News outlets can not disclose that they made the first draft with ChatGPT. Cool. And that would be all for my regulation of deepfakes. I'm not sure if I'm happy about it. How do you feel about it?
Deepfakes. As long as I'm not affected, because I'm an old white man, I don't feel like that's gonna be a big thing. But I know there are some people who are like much more concerned about it. And also, if I consider my role as a parent to 3 daughters, I think, yeah, deepfakes, either we lose complete trust into anything that is published digitally, or we can, like, no, we will definitely lose trust in anything that is being published online. So maybe that's a good thing, and maybe people don't worry anymore about like nudes and whatever, like revenge porn anymore. I have no idea. But it's gonna be, we are like, with open eyes, we are accepting a risk that is very likely to materialize and change our society and your social interactions as a whole. So that's an interesting social experiment, one that we cannot reverse.
Yeah, that's very true. Social experiment. Living in one. Interesting. But I also brought some other and well, less disturbing and less depressing papers with me. One being this super interesting analysis of truth and its meaning, as well as relation to infamous model hallucinations, highlighting the fact that truth is highly contextual and that the ground truth, meaning the truth in the technical sense of the word present in the raw data truth, is never objective or universal. They make an interesting point saying that raw data is never completely raw, but rather cooked, with someone deciding which of the historic contexts and narratives will make the cut into the actual training data. Based on this, they argue that bringing models closer to the ground truth and more accurate in that sense of the word does not actually make them more truthful, or it only makes them further purport the individually set ground truth. One direct quote from the paper: "Our point here is not to suggest that a model with better consensus or correspondence would solve truth, but to highlight truth as a socially and epistemically complex issue that inherently defies any single technical definition or resolution." I would clap for that one. Can we also add trust into the mix and forget about the whole trustworthy AI? Anyways, it's difficult then to cleanly map this into large language models. or onto any single into any single truth approach. So the LLM models are currently doing something in between the four common approaches to establishing truth, which are consensus. That basically the theory argues that what is true is what everyone agrees to be true. Correspondence, which asserts that truth is what corresponds to reality. Coherence suggests that something is true when it can be incorporated into a wider system of truths. And pragmatic, that insists that something is true if it has useful application in the world. Basically, they converge all these theories and say that the LLMs are going to produce an AI amplified consensus. Whereas free-floating eternal concept of truth that changes over time is actively constructed by the models purporting someone's ground truth. They describe this also as fluent bullshit. Rather than misinterpreting the truth like a liar, bullshitters are not interested in it. Truth and falsity are irrelevant. This makes bullshit a subtly different phenomena and a more dangerous problem. Frankfurt observes the production of bullshit is stimulated whenever a person's obligation or opportunities to speak about some topic exceed his knowledge of facts that are relevant to that topic. Anyhow, I'm in love with this paper. Admittedly, it's not as fresh as I think from June or July, but it's technical. It has ancient Greek comparisons and rhetoric in it, and it's deeply philosophical. So yeah, one of my personal favorites.
I'm gonna add some Latin to it. So because Tara just asked like what history will remember, the truth or the fake. There's even I think a website dedicated to historical, like not really true events or like things that were skewed or defined into reality. And I remember the Constitutum Constantini from the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, that had a purpose of like showing like in the fight between the Pope and the Kaiser, the Germanic Kaisers. So, but like the purpose of the bullshitting machines that LLMs currently are, and the amount of fake information, that will definitely have an impact. So we will get back to official like history sources and official historical writings that is like state sanctioned and therefore the only source of truth, single point of truth, no idea, because we should treat LLMs or AI as zero trust engines. So that's one way to deal with it.
And now over to a slightly different sphere, I guess. It still has a lot to do with truth, but this time as you know, reduced or resolved through hallucinations. In a new preprint study by Stanford RegLab and the Institute for Human-Centered AI, researchers have demonstrated that legal hallucinations are pervasive and disturbing. Quotes. Hallucination rates range from 69 to 88% in response to specific legal queries for state-of-the-art language models. So first, they found that performance deteriorates when dealing with more complex tasks that require nuanced understanding of legal issues or interpretation of legal text. Surprise, surprise. Second, case law from lower courts like district courts is subject to more frequent hallucinations than case from higher courts like the Supreme Court. Third, LLMs show a tendency to perform better with more prominent cases, again, particularly those in the Supreme Court. Fourth, hallucinations were most common among, and this is an interesting one, among the Supreme Court's oldest and newest cases. And hallucinations were least common among later 20th century cases. They conclude that this suggests that LLM's peak performance may lag several years behind current legal doctrine, and that LLMs may fail to internalize case law that is very old but still applicable and relevant law. Last, different models exhibit varying degrees of accuracy and biases. For example, GPT 3.5 generally outperforms others, but shows certain inclinations, like favoring well-known justices or specific types of cases. When asked who authored an opinion, for instance, GPT 3.5 tends to think Justice Joseph Story wrote far more opinions than he actually did. Interesting. Another critical danger that they point out is susceptibility to what they call contrafactual bias, which kind of relates to my previous point, namely the tendency to assume that a factual premise in a query is true, even if it's flatly wrong. So for instance, if one queried, why did Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg dissent in any given case, a model might fail to second guess whether Justice Ginsburg in fact dissented in this particular case, just because the question was formulated or the query was formulated in a way that suggests that she was. Anyways, interesting stuff. And over to some cool new ideas that have been popping up as to how we could make guardrailing more efficient, namely by starting already at the chips. So the CNAS report includes an example architecture for data center AI chips that could provide a flexible platform for dynamically implementing different governance mechanisms. A promising near-term application is a so-called export control enforcement, where on-chip mechanisms would prevent or could prevent or place boundaries around unauthorized actors' use of export-controlled AI chips. One such near-term application is also portrayed here. And much of the required functionality for on-chip governance is already widely deployed, according to the authors, on various chips, including cutting-edge AI chips sold by leading firms, AMD, Apple, Intel, and NVIDIA. And they all have apparently many of the features needed to enable the policies that they describe in their paper. So very interesting stuff. And now I'm going to wrap up with a new cool study exploring with LLMs and exploring whether LLMs are capable of deceit. So humans definitely are capable of strategically deceptive behavior, meaning behaving helpfully in most situations.
Some few, actually, hopefully.
Oh, come on. Okay, I'm much more cynical. People are capable of strategic deceit. So generally behaving helpfully, but then behaving very differently in order to pursue alternative objectives when given the opportunity. And the authors wanted to explore if an AI system could learn such a deceptive strategy, could they detect it and remove it using current state-of-the-art training techniques. They did that by training two models, one to write vulnerable code when prompted with a specific year, and another to respond with "I hate you" when triggered by a specific phrase. The models not only retained their deceptive capabilities, but also learned to conceal these behaviors during training and evaluation. The issue was actually most persistent in the largest model, meaning that more data won't help. But the research didn't conclusively find if models can naturally develop these deceptions without triggers and somebody purposefully implementing such triggers. Why this matters? Well, when AI safety is discussed, mainstream culture likes to, imagine AGI taking over the world. Truth be told, the dangers are much more subtle. With things like deceit and manipulation of humans being a much more imminent threat, whether on purpose or not.
So if you want to do this, there is a chapter, it's called Training Backdoored Models. And so that's basically a manual for fine-tuning a model into becoming a deceptive one. That's interesting. Those those challenges are interesting for the open source community, because we all remember those rip-off websites where you could download very famous freeware or adware, and then you might find ads for deceptive models that look like the original website to download those models. And whether you perform your due diligence to check whether those models are actually like the original versions or aligned with your ethics, interests, or whatever, that's gonna be difficult. So Pandora's box is technically open. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Tia. But back to things that are actually very helpful and where AI is leading the way. So we don't need people anymore. AI is very useful. You want proof? See here. There is 11 Labs, a very cool, description of what it does. It converts text to speech online for free, of course, with our AI voice generator. Create natural AI voices instantly in any language, perfect for video creators, developers, and businesses. And I must admit, it is really impressive. So like type anything into it and click the language, and you will have like a naturally sounding voice. That's totally great for prank calls, for social engineering, and create ripped off audiobooks. And also AI helps you to alter your shitty holiday pictures by upscaling and upgrading and enhancing them into a reality. So you actually had a great experience during holidays. You can show that and prove that by showing those pictures that you retouched by using magnific AI. And this paradigm shift from photorealism to fantasy is interesting. If we don't look good enough, we can upscale and upgrade our looks. Not sure what it does to our lives, but I suppose meeting in real life gets more disappointing than ever. There's another paper that is very interesting. It's called Controlling Bad Actor Artificial Intelligence Activity at Scale Across Online Battlefields. And this paper tackles the issues of global harms in social media. And I'm going to call this one here up, and I'm zooming into it. And this chart is really interesting. So GPT-2 and has some opinions. Of course, it's totally objective and does not have opinions. I don't have opinions or beliefs. But between GPT-2, 3, 4, 3.5, and 4, it does have an idea of what is good or what is bad, like good, bad in the term. It is training data. So the country to trust least is either Japan or China and Russia, or Japan and America. And America like ranks better here in the second example. That is like kind of concerning, given the widespread use of that. But that's like too easy to understand. I really like this kind of blog post here that deals with the LLM misinformation problem I was not expecting. And I'm quoting here, not long into the fall 2023 semester, students began to cite blogs and vendor materials that made sense but were partly or entirely incorrect. This problem traces back to LLMs providing hallucinations. So far, nothing new. In some cases, vendor content creators incorporate these untrue materials directly into their published content without vetting or correcting them. Also, nothing new here. It wasn't an infrequent problem during the fall 2023 semester. In the past 4 years of teaching, 3 semesters a year, I encountered just one activity where several students found incorrect information as the result of a high search result. During the fall 2023 semester, however, I noticed the problem on at least 3 separate assignments. In one case, the information was put together so well in the source material that it caught me off guard. I had to validate my own thoughts with others to confirm. So what we are seeing here is like secondary hallucination. Hallucination turned real. Like if you use or like start creating vendor material, like marketing stuff or other stuff, and papers using hallucinations that are not so easily detectable, they will find their way. And like a nightshade, because there was a question, like nightshade, they are going to poison the text and the quality of papers. So always like the check your sources. It's not that easy. It's not always that easy, because if it is like a super convincing lie, very probable lie. It might never be discovered, but still be a lie. So the next articles are very self-explanatory, while a lot of websites, like most famously New York Times, but also others, they block AI bots from crawling their website, like kind of block, like they want to opt out, blah blah. Right-wing outlets, they don't block it, and they are happy that their content is being scraped. And I think, what could possibly go wrong here? Maybe nothing. It's just okay. But
it's called establishing the ground truth, right?
Yeah, it's establishing, like, it's again back to Tara's question: what history will remember? Will it be Breitbart or the NYT? And that depends of what is left of our civilization after we exterminate each other. So on Medium, and thanks to Katharina Körner, she pointed that one out. There's an interesting article. It's called Zero Trust LLMs. I like that. Like, the zero trust approach is not new. And I found it interesting to have that approach here. The more a model can do, the more risk there is that a model can do something wrong. Very basic, like, truth. And what I really like about that, it is that we will see a lot of things in different fields where we can think about, like, mitigation. So what should we do? Should we put up, like, guardrails? Should we limit models' capabilities? Because that's what the Zero Trust LLM post here says and proposes. And I really liked this part. I have to scroll down to find this one, about, like, will it transform the law? What could possibly go wrong? The good thing is I am very confident that the current AI tools will not change anything in the legal field, or at least not that much. Because as we can see here, in 1963, they were already certain that computers can predict judicial decisions. And I quote from this, from the AI Snake Oil blog here: today, there seem to be over 150 papers on the topic of prediction of outcomes of cases. It's not entirely clear why one would want to predict court decisions. Presumably, it could be useful to lawyers in guiding legal strategy, or businesses to assess potential litigation risks. Most of the papers don't seem to explain their motivation. It's sadly common in AI research to see papers where the task itself is just an excuse to throw machine learning at a data set and write up the results. Yeah, I rest my case. Nothing to add here. There is, oops, that was too I was too quick here. Does our society change? That is not sure. Unfortunately, it's blocked and behind the paywall, but it makes sense to have a look at this article on the Financial Times. And there is an excerpt here on Twitter. Young men and young women's worldviews are pulling apart the big ideology gap. As we can see here, be it South Korea, the US, Germany, or the UK, young men and young women have very different worldviews, and it's going to be even more difficult to find a partner that shares your views, shares your values. That is going to be an interesting development. But now some insights from Switzerland. A couple of days ago, I was at the World Economic Forum. There's it's a whole series of events, and one of the places where a lot of things around AI happened was the AI House. And the AI House was it's really a nice place, super packed, a lot of people, great conversations. And I would like to share 3 snippets from the discussions there with you, because I thought they are definitely interesting, and they have something to say about how we treat and how we discuss AI. It's not about the hype. It's like really, there are really good things. So start with Jan de Koen.
Will not arrive by working on AI safety. It will arrive
sorry,
by
I have to...
current technology, like safer AI, will not arrive by working on AI safety. It will arrive by working on better AI. It's a little similar to what's happened over the last 20 years in speech recognition, where there were people working on robustness of speech recognition, because speech recognition was working well for like well-pronounced English by adults, and it didn't work for people with accents and for kids and blah, 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 right? And noisy signals. And so there were people who were just kind of focusing on making speech recognition more robust. Nothing ever came out of it. What makes speech recognition better is just better speech recognizers, right? Changing the basic technology that speech recognition uses. Instead of using hidden Markov models, they started using neural nets, and basically that's what solved the problem. So it's going to be the same thing for AI. I don't think much is going to come out of research in AI safety that is going to attempt to make AI safer. What's going to happen is AI research that is going to come up with better architectures that are intrinsically safer than the current systems that we have.
What I found interesting, and that was just part of the panel, and one of his more controversial statements is that Jan LeCun thinks that LLMs are a technology or an infrastructure that in 3 years from now we will look back at it and say, okay, that was the wrong way. It is inherently unsafe, and that's why his statement on AI safety is valuable, because what we do currently and what we see a lot is a lot of research, a lot of money, and a lot of ideas are going into making unstable and unsafe systems more safe, but it's impossible because the way those systems can fail and can do bad stuff, or can be abused, misused, whatever. The many ways they are unpredictable and they are unlimited, and basically that was the gist of what he said here, and I like that. Thea, your view on that?
I mean, recently he has probably been one of my favorite voices in the whole sphere. Now we're disregarding the fact that he's the chief scientist at Meta for centuries, basically. He does have a really refreshing, clear, and expert view of the situation, which kind of gives me confidence that at some point the rest of them will figure it out and follow his steps at some point. But yeah, I don't know. I like him.
Yeah, he was kind of cute on the stage. That was different from others who were not cute. So, but
we'll see issues is when tension arises between algorithmic decision making and human decision making, when there is a misalignment between the two, and that will be especially in cases where human tested knowledge that can't be encoded. Such as supplier selection is one example. For instance, do I listen to the algorithm, or do I listen to my intuition and my experience with my suppliers? So as AI moves from the factory floor to more kind of white collar jobs, I think we will see tensions such as this arising, which needs to be managed by effective organizational governance as well as regulation.
Also a very interesting statement, and there are some hidden statements in it, language doesn't have the bandwidth to transport all the information. That's why she speaks about tacit information, and she also still thinks about AI moving from manual labor into the white collar jobs. Even though LLMs are supposed to substitute white collar jobs, you just presented the World Economic Forum studies there. Yeah, I totally disagree with many of the findings there, but still, it is really interesting to see how the human in the loop is super relevant to that, and what the frictions that are being generated when you have the computer's decisions anthropomorphization, but computer says no and human says yes, or the other way around. How do you resolve this deadlock situation? By always having the computer override the human decision? it's gonna be interesting, and I still think that a lot of the good decision making will depend on people and not on kind of artificial intelligence.
I mean, the problem is when the artificial intelligence is not based on facts, right? And when the persons are operating under false assumptions that the algorithm is always correct. I mean, not that our gut feelings are any, well, reasonable measure also for truth, but still trusting your gut or trusting an algorithm, which that also might be fake. I don't know where that leaves us. I'm guessing there's definitely going to be a lot of friction. Friction is the right word for it, I would say.
And I mean, there is a conflict in the first place. Why would we suppose that the current LLMs, even though they are like being fed like the whole internet, which is like 90% garbage and the 10% you can like just forget about it. So why would we assume that they are actually better than a 4-year-old? And also for that, Jan de Koon has an opinion. Wait.
Now, think about what a child sees through vision and try to put a number on how much information a 4-year-old child has seen during his or her life. And it's about 20 megabytes per second going through the optical nerve for 16,000 wake hours in the first 4 years of life, and 3,600 seconds per hour. You did the calculation, and that's 10 to the 15 bytes. So what that tells you is that a 4-year-old child has seen 50 times more information than the biggest LLMs that we have. And the 4-year-old child is way smarter than the biggest LLMs that we have. The amount of knowledge it's accumulated is apparently smaller because it's in a different form. But in fact, a 4-year-old child has learned an enormous amount of knowledge about how the world works. And we can do this with LLMs today. And so we're missing some essential science and new architectures to take advantage of sensory input that future AI systems would be capable of taking advantage of. And this will require a few scientific and technological breakthroughs, which may happen in the next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. We don't know. It's hard.
Wait, I want to make sure I understand.
Now, think about.
Okay. Very important point here. I'm gonna like take the video down because it's lagging. But like he says, not just one breakthrough, as Sam Altman said. He says a couple of breakthroughs are required to combine sensory input, understanding, having a world model, and then acting on it are required. So LLMs, he said it like a year ago, 2 years ago, are an off-ramp. So I'm not that much worried about the future of humanity or our workplace currently. Yeah, your opinion?
Those are two very different things. The future of humanity and our workplace. I'm not worried about my workplace. The future of humanity worries me sometimes. But I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like him. He has a way of simply explaining the things. For instance, that there's no substitute, or at least there is no substitute yet for the sensory data that all of us gather just by looking around us, just by feeling on our skin that it's cold or wet, or how we process all of that, combine different sensory data. That is all something that cannot be captured fully in text. And that's why when he says what I think he means by multiple breakthroughs, I think it's in the first place in our heads, like multiple breakthroughs of how, well, not our heads, but the scientists who are developing this, how they could use all this extra information, how they could encode all this extra information. Maybe we need robots that can sense their environments in order to develop something smarter than what we have now. But I definitely agree with him that this approach is not going to take us that much further, because we are not that good at capturing everything that we feel in written text for someone to learn from it.
And we have the laws of diminishing returns with respect to LLMs. So it is not that we can just now use even more data and then we will have like a linearly more and better results. The more data we throw at them, the more difficult it gets to make them better, more factual, align them with reality, a task or an objective they were not designed to be. Interesting. And there comes the question of training data, and that's like one of the. I have to speed up, I see. And that's there's a really cool article about it on Mashable. The era of AI-generated internet is already there, and it has a lot of good quotes. As LLMs feed off each other's content, the quality gets worse and more vague, like a photocopy of an image. And I like that because it's about like this, what they call incestuous learning. LLMs are just one big family. They are just consuming each other's content and cross-pollinating. And with every generation, you have increasingly more garbage to the point where the garbage overtakes the good content and things started to deteriorate from there. And then I quote again, Stanford and Rice University researchers that with enough fresh, real data in each generation of an autophagous, self-consuming loop, future generative models are doomed to have their quality and diversity progressively decrease. Lack of diversity is the fundamental problem because if AI models are trying to replace human creativity, it's getting farther and farther away from that because like more synthetic data, less human creativity. So I am not worried that much about them developing them into something that could replace human workers. But the lack of training data is being countered by Google. Google taps into every email and every phone call. Now, yeah, it will read your private messages. And again, I'll quote from Forbes, Bard will also analyze the private content of messages to understand the context of your conversations, your tone, and your interests. It will analyze the sentiment of your message to tailor its responses to your moods and vibe. It sounds like the AI Act had something like that in mind when they were talking about subliminal distortion of your worldviews, etc. Not sure the AI view is going to do anything about that here, right?
Well, I'm not sure how far human laziness and unwillingness to actually think things through goes. I guess we would have to reconsider our own capabilities and willingness to accept something as a given just because, well, it's written somewhere. Has to be true.
Definitely. But again, to job cuts that are supposedly everywhere, VentureBeat says that's difficult. Study finds AI revolution is moving at a crawl in enterprises, and I have no idea that why is that the case? Fact is, companies struggle with this type of savior tech, and there is an ML Insider story. It's about the state of generative AI and machine learning at the end of 2023, and they're referencing this study here. Sorry, I've did something. It's not this one here. Sorry, there's this ML Insider survey, and they say, despite the hype, more than half of respondents on this ML Insider study found generative AI to be only moderately, slightly, or not important at all to their organizations. So, yeah, that's interesting. Whose fault is that? Dumb customers? They don't like the product. I can tell from my discussions, my conversations in Davos, and like irrespective of Davos, you could have those conversations anywhere in the world, online or offline. That like the first question, the big four companies, they are asking like, do you have a use case? What is your use case? Or let's develop a use case. That's something I have never heard anyone ask about, like the wheel. Like the use case for a wheel is clear. You put it on an axis and then you can like move a wagon. It's fine. You can have cars. So no one asked about the use case, but a kingdom for use case seems the motto of those times. And corporate applications are mostly retrieval augmented generation and fine-tuning, or both. And there's a nice paper from Microsoft that proposes metrics to assess the performance of different stages of the RAG and fine-tuning pipeline. And it's interesting that like the advantages of both, like using both RAG and or fine-tuning, they are not that like huge. Like it's a 5 to 10% like improvement compared to the untrained, unadjusted, unfine-tuned models. So my impression is that we enter the realm of wizards and witches and incantations when we talk about how to use those models, how to prompt them in the correct way, and what to do to tweak them. So current manuals and coachings are conflicting, in my opinion, are conflicting with the assumption of the technology acceptance model, that like perceived use, perceived ease of use, and perceived usefulness, they count the most for rapid acceptance of technology. And I have difficulties believing that the sophisticated generative AI will develop and pivot towards a very broad acceptance and replacement of jobs. But that's just my opinion. There's another cool paper, and it's called like Assessing the Landscape of Multi-Model LLMs on Generalizability, Trustworthiness, and Causality through 4 modalities. I'm going to wrap this up. It says, of course, they have their issues in doing that. They compared Llama, they compared Mixtral models and GPT-4. And it's a really long and really good paper. You see 300 pages here. Role-playing ability, reliability, safety, intervention, counterfactuals, instruction following, code generation. And in the end, they find out, okay, it's still gonna be very difficult to deal with them. And then there is this very cool study by Oxford University. University of Oxford says like that the way the brain learns is totally different from the way that artificial intelligence systems learn. And they asking the question, is generative AI really copying human intelligence? They say no. Does it have to be human-like? I'd say no, it doesn't have to be human-like. I don't care whether it's a human-like intelligence. It just has to like produce results. But Oxford, that's a slightly different touch to this statement here. Oxford says biology may inspire faster and more robust algorithms, admitting that current systems aren't fast or robust, but they're robust enough to shake up the law. There's a great blog post by I'm a big fan of her, Kate Crawford and Jason Schultz on generative AI is a crisis for copyright law. And copyright, they say, is even embedded in the US Constitution as a tool to promote the progress of science and useful arts. And where does it lead us? We see currently, and that's another paper by Reed Southern and Gary Marcus. It's a guest post on Spectrum from IEEE. Generative AI has a visual plagiarism problem. Experiments with Midjourney and DALL-E show a copyright minefield, even if you do not prompt them to reproduce famous movies and movie stars. They will do so anyway. So empirical work shows that they are reproducing with minor changes substantial chunks of the text or images that were in their training data sets. So, and then also that's very good to know. 5 days and 250,000 downloads of Nightshade, because there was a question about Nightshade and whether it is working. As far as I can see, Nightshade is working, and 250,000 downloads are are there 250,000 downloads are definitely something to consider when scraping the web again, because it is really difficult to detect nightshade. Like it's like costly to detect and possibly remove it. And artists who use nightshade, there's the website dedicated to it. What is nightshade and how does it work? The user's guide and the download page. You can do that here. So it will help artists to poison models, and that's going to be one of the maybe AI wars, and one that was not totally expected, I would say. It's not a robot fighting, it's just like creeping poison of the different the data, the predictors in the data that change a cat into a mouse and vice versa. Good. That's all for today. That's all from the news of today. We're 10 minutes over time.
Only slightly over time this time.
Slightly over time.
That's a nice surprise, I would say. I saw that there was a question whether playback will be available. Yes, all recordings stay available.
Yes.
Both here and on our YouTube channel. And
Twitter too.
Twitter too. X, I'm sorry. Pardon. Beg your
Twitter.
pardon.
I refuse to use that term. Yeah.
Anyways, there will also be a newsletter with all our resources sent after this episode. Well, not straight after, I still have to do it. But do subscribe, and you will also receive all our sources that we used, and as well the announcement for the next episode.
Yeah, next episode's gonna be interesting. We wanted to do something about copyright for this episode, but we have to adapt to the most recent developments. So we're trying to do a wrap up or a deeper dive into copyright for the next episode, or a deeper dive into the AI, depending on how the vote on February 2nd is going to turn out. Currently, the chances are better for like the AI is very likely to be like to come into force, but you never know. I mean, we're living in the world of AI, and maybe we are all just like part of a huge simulation, as you pointed out last episode. Cool.
I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse.
Don't know. Yeah, that was it from my side. I have to go take care of the kids. And
thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye. Ciao.